The first pattern that I'm going to start making is the back pant pocket. So I'm starting out with tracing paper to make all of my patterns, and I do have the link to this in the description box. I'm starting off by drawing a horizontal line that's 6 inches, and then I am drawing a vertical line that's 5 inches on one end of that horizontal line. And then on the other end of the horizontal line, I'm also drawing a 5-inch vertical line as well. Then I'm finding the midpoint of that first horizontal line. So that's going to be 3 inches for me since the full line is 6 inches. And I just made a mark at that midpoint. And then from that midpoint, I'm measuring and marking 7 inches down. And then I am basically going to draw a diagonal line to connect the bottom of both ends of the vertical line to that mark that I just made. And this is what the back pant pocket will look like. The next thing I did was I just labeled the pattern. I labeled it back jean pocket, cut 2 times, add 1 inch seam allowance to the top edge, add a 1/2 inch seam allowance to the side and the bottom edges. So the next thing we're gonna make is the pattern for the belt loops. And in this video, I just want to give you guys a heads up that I'm going to be showing you how to make the patterns for a zipper fly. So basically the fly facing and the fly shield. And I'm also going to show you how to make the back yoke that goes on the back of the jeans. I'm going to show you how to make the waistband. And I'm also going to show you how to manipulate your front and back pant block pattern in order to make a wide leg pant pattern. So it's going to be a pretty hefty tutorial, so make sure you go ahead and grab a snack, grab some water, stay hydrated. And if you get confused at any point, just leave a comment down below, or you can even DM me on Instagram. Right, let's make the belt loop pattern. So basically the belt loop pattern is just one giant rectangle that is 13.75 inches wide and then 1 inch long. So after that, I labeled the pattern belt loop pattern, cut 1 time, no seam allowance needed. Then after that, I know that later on when I actually go to put the pattern on the fabric, I'm going to be dividing this giant pattern into 5 different pieces since we'll have 5 different belt loops. So to get a head start on the math, I basically measured and marked 2.75 inches, and I repeated this so that I had a total of 4 marks. And doing that is what will allow me to understand where each of the belt loop pieces will end. So you can see we have a total of 5 pieces here. All right, let's make the zipper fly pattern. So we're going to start with a fly facing piece, and I drew a horizontal line that is 2 inches. And then the next thing I did was I took the zipper that I'm going to be using and I folded over that excess fabric just above the zipper, like the actual zipper itself. And then I measured from the top all the way down to the bottom of the zipper tape, and that was 8 inches for me. But honestly, I think that that's a standard measurement for any zipper that size. So on both sides of the horizontal line, I drew a vertical line that measured 8 inches since that's the length of the zipper that I measured. Then on the second vertical line, so the one on the right side, I measured 1 inch up from the bottom of the vertical line and I made a mark. And then from that mark, I basically drew a curved line to connect that mark to the bottom of the first vertical line. And you can freehand this or you can use a curved ruler. I do have a link to this curved ruler in the description box for you to check out. And then I just erased the rest of the vertical line that's below that curved line because we don't need that. And here you can see that we have the fly facing pattern. So I just labeled it fly facing, cut 1 time, no seam allowance needed. Okay, now it's time to make the fly shield pattern. So I'm basically drawing a rectangle that is 4 inches wide, and then the length of the rectangle is going to be the same length as the zipper that we measured in the fly facing part of this tutorial. So that's 8 inches for me. After that, I labeled the pattern fly shield, cut 1, no seam allowance needed. So now we're gonna draft the pattern for the front part of the pants. So I'm starting with my front pattern block. I do have a tutorial on how to make a custom pattern block to fit your own measurements. So I'm literally just tracing the front pant leg. And I lightly trace the bottom since I'm going to be extending it. So right now the inseam line of my pattern is kind of like diagonal, and so I want to make it a straight line. This is what's going to help to create the wide leg effect. So starting at the crotch, I just took my L ruler and I drew a vertical line all the way down to the end of the tracing paper. The next thing that I wanted to do was I also wanted to square out the side seam line because that's also kind of slanted. So I kind of just like imagined an imaginary horizontal line that's like on the same axis of the crotch line. From that point, I just squared out the side seam line with my L ruler. I hope that makes sense, but if it doesn't, just leave me a comment. So in order to lengthen my pant leg, what I did was I started at the waistline and I measured and marked 44 inches. So that's going to be the new length of my pants. And then from that mark, I basically just drew a horizontal line that connected to the inseam line of the front pant pattern. And then that created the new bottom of my pant leg. Then I labeled the new front pant leg pattern front wide leg pant, cut 2 times, flip 1, add 1/2 inch seam allowance to the sides and 1 inch seam allowance to the bottom. Okay, so now it's time to make the back pant pattern. So starting with my back pant pattern block, I put it on some tracing paper and I traced all around. And I also made sure to trace the dart as well. And similar to the front pattern, I only lightly traced the bottom since I'm going to be extending it. And here you can see me just transferring the dart. So you definitely want to make sure to do that. And then after that, I extended the center dart line all the way to the bottom of the pant pattern. And basically this center line is going to help us to remove the dart later on. The next thing I did was I measured and marked 44 inches starting at the top of the waistline. And I know it's a little hard to see the mark, but basically this mark is where the new bottom of the pants will be. So I just extended that side seam line until it hit that mark that I just made. And then from that mark, I drew a horizontal line connecting to the inseam line. And then I extended the inseam line so that it would touch the horizontal line. And then I also extended the center line of the dart. Then I cut all around the pattern, and I also cut the center dart line as well as the right dart leg. And you'll know that you cut it out correctly because the dart should be on the same panel as the crotch. If you're liking this tutorial so far, hit the like button and subscribe to my channel if you haven't already. And make sure you turn on the notification bell so that you can actually see when I post a new video, because you don't want to miss out on the fun, do you? I don't want to miss out on the fun, and I don't think you want to miss out on the fun, so go ahead and turn on those notifications. The next thing I did was I took some glue and I glued down, I put glue on the dart. And then after I did that, I took the other panel that doesn't have the dart and I put it on top of the dart, making sure that the edge lined up with the left dart leg. And I also made sure that the waistline was even and the same height for both panels. And so now you see we have this open space, which means that the dart has been closed. And then what I did was I took some extra paper and I put it underneath the open area where the dart is open, and then I just taped it down. I kind of wish I glued it because it ended up looking kind of messy, but it's whatever. The next thing I did was I lined up the crotch and the inseam edge of the front pant leg to the crotch of the back leg pattern, and I traced the side seam of the front leg pattern. So before I traced the side seam of the front leg pattern, I just made sure to put down some pattern weights to stop the pattern from shifting while I was tracing it. And you can see that some of the front leg pattern overlaps onto that extra paper that I laid down underneath the open area. The next thing I did was I extended the bottom of the pant leg until it touched that vertical line that I just drew. So you can see that the new side seam line cuts off some of the original side seam, and we don't want that because it's going to make the pants fit much tighter. So to fix this, what I did was I just blended the new side seam line into the original side a little lower. So I came down about maybe 2 inches down from the waistline, and then I created a new diagonal line to blend into that red seam line that I drew. And after I did that, I felt like I needed to bring the line down a little more, so I just kind of made a mark just where the opening of the dart is, and then from that mark I drew a new diagonal line to blend into the seam line. And here now you can see I just crossed out the old line so that I wouldn't be confused about where to cut. But now you can see that we have the full waist of the original pant pattern. So our pants are not going to be tight, and the line starts just where the dart starts to open. So I'm going to cut the pattern out on this side. And this is just a diagram of where I'm going to be cutting my pattern. After I cut out the pattern, I titled it Back Pant Wide Leg High Waist Pattern, cut 2 times, flip 1, add 1 inch seam allowance to the bottom, and add 1/2 inch seam allowance to the sides and to the top. Okay, so now it's time to work on the waistband pattern. So I measured and marked 1.5 inches down on both sides of the waistline of the back pant pattern, and I made a mark on both sides. And then what I did was I took my curved ruler and I connected the 2 marks with a curved line. And then I labeled the center back and the side back of the waistband. Then after that, I repeated the same thing with the front pant pattern. I did it off camera, but basically I just went down 1.5 inches on both sides and then connected those 2 marks. So this is the 2 waistband pieces that I have from the back pant pattern and the front pant pattern. The next thing that I want to do is I want to connect the side front and the side back pieces together, and I just want to make sure that when the pieces are connected, it kind of forms the shape of a smiley face or like a U shape. The next thing I did was I traced the outer edge of the 2 pattern pieces together, and then I labeled the side back of the pattern piece. And we're not quite yet done because we still have to extend the front of the waistband to accommodate for the fly shield. So I measured half the width of the fly shield, and that is 1 inch. So I'm basically going to be extending the front of the waistband pattern by 1 inch. So I'm adding a 1 inch line to the top and the bottom, and then connecting those 2 lines with a vertical line like so. And then now I just erased the original line because we don't need it now that we have a new front line. And this is a list of labels that I added to the pattern. Okay, so now I'm going to go ahead and make the front pockets. And I started with my front pant leg pattern, and I measured and marked 10 inches along the side seam of the front pant leg. Then after that, I just eyeballed a little less than half of the width of the waistband, and I made a mark. Then I took a piece of tracing paper and I folded it in half, and I lined up the folded edge of the paper with the mark that I made on the waistband. And then after that, I just traced the waistband and then the side seam, and I stopped at the mark that I made on the side seam. After that, I took my pattern and I just extended the bottom of the side seam to the folded edge of the pattern paper, and then I just cut out the whole pattern with the paper still folded. Then I measured about exactly 1 inch from the folded edge of the pattern, and I made a mark. Then I measured 2 inches down from the side seam and I made a mark. Then I unfolded the paper, and then I connected the 2 marks with a curved line. You can use a curved ruler or you can eyeball it. But then I cut out the curved line, and this piece I'm going to set it aside for later. Then I labeled the pattern outside of jeans pocket, right pant leg, cut 2 times, flip 1, add seam allowance. And so when I fold it, you can get a better sense of what it's going to look like when I actually start sewing the pattern pieces together. Then I took that little cutout piece from earlier, this one here, and I lined up the corner of that piece to the corner of the front pant leg, and then I just traced it, and then I added a note to add seam allowance around this cutout area, and then I cut out the pattern from the front pattern leg. And now you see this is how the two pattern pieces will work together with the pocket and the front pant leg. Alright, we are finally at the last part of this tutorial, the back yoke pattern. So I'm starting with the back pant pattern, and I'm taking a piece of tracing paper and I'm putting it on top of the pattern, and I'm just tracing the top edge, so the two sides and the top edge of the pant pattern. Then after that, I measured 1 inch along the side seam line, and then I made a mark. And then on the center back line, I measured 2.25 inches down, and I made a mark. And then I basically connected these two marks with a diagonal line. Then I cut out the yoke pattern, and it looks something like this, and I just labeled it back yoke, cut 2 times, flip 1, add seam allowance. And then I took that same pattern and I put it on top of my back pant pattern, and I just traced it. And then I made a note to add seam allowance to the top of the back pant pattern where the yoke will be. And then I just cut out that diagonal line. Now I know I could have directly put the yoke pattern on this pant pattern, but I just thought it looked a little messy with the tape and everything, so I figured it'd be cleaner to make a separate yoke pattern on new tracing paper. And so these are the two back pant pattern pieces. You got the pant leg, and then we have the yoke at the top.